Afternoon, parents of Prince George's County Public Schools. Welcome to our third Wellness Wednesday session for parents. Tonight's session is dedicated to attendance. We'll talk about school refusal or school avoidance. We'll talk about the law and our administrative procedure as it pertains to attendance, and certainly connect everything back to mental health. In the past Wellness Wednesday sessions, we've talked about bullying, we've talked about mental health and wellness, and for a bonus session that we provided in December, we spoke about grief and loss. All of these things connect to student wellness. So you may ask, how does attendance connect to student wellness? We intend to answer that question tonight. But more importantly, we know that attendance supports a student's academic wellness. Did you know that every school day counts in the life of a student? And research shows that students who attend school regularly have shown to achieve at a higher level than students who did not. Did you also know that students who do not attend school are at a greater risk for dropping out? And lastly, think about this. Research shows that missing just 2 days of school a month will impact a student's ability to perform. So tonight, we thank you for joining tonight's session, and we hope that you will glean a greater understanding as to why school attendance is so important to not just the students' academic wellness and success, but their overall mental health and wellness. And so without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our county's mental health coordinator, Miss Emily Snyder. Emily, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Faison, and thank you all for joining us this evening. We hope that you will gain some information and strategies from the presentation that we have for you. We have a presentation and also a panel discussion as well with some key players in our wonderful school district. So I will begin with the presentation. Here we go. So like Dr. Faison said, today we'll be focused on attendance, specifically school refusal, the law, and how it overlaps with mental health. And we also have Spanish interpretation available, and I will allow one of our wonderful interpreters to explain more about that. And thank you also to our district board, who are all listed on this side. We appreciate all of the support that they have given to our Wellness Wednesdays thus far, including this particular important topic. So thank you. And we have a panelist. Again, my name is Emily Pasco. I'm the mental health coordinator for Prince George's County Public Schools. And you've already met Dr. Faison, who's the associate superintendent of student services. And I will allow all of the other panelists to introduce themselves as well.
Good evening. I'm Jacqueline Nave, Supervisor of Pupil Personnel Services.
Good evening. I'm Tynika Strayhorn, the Acting Instructional Supervisor for Home and Hospital Teaching, Homeschooling, and the McKinney-Vento program.
Good evening. My name is Liz Briganti. I am the Program Director, Clinical Supervisor for the Prince George's County Public Schools Youth First Care Program under Shepherd Pratt.
And we also have Ms. Strayhorn on as well.
Oh. Did you guys hear me? I am Tynika Strayhorn. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and so some of the objectives we have an overview of attendance, the key terms, some functions of school refusal, attendance law, mental health factors, and strategies to increase attendance. So starting with some key terms, because there can be some overlap and confusion about the terms surrounding attendance. So it's a big umbrella. Absenteeism is just general absence from school, whether that's lawful or unlawful, excused or unexcused. And the reason we capture attendance, regardless of whether it's excused or not, is, as Dr. Faison said, absences can cause detriments regardless of the cause of those. Truancy is a little bit more specific, and it refers to the frequency of unlawful absence. And then school refusal is emotionally based absenteeism from school. So school refusal is when a student is choosing to not attend school to avoid or gain something, or because of something that's going on in their own life. Chronically absent refers to students who are absent 10% or more of school days. And in our 180-day school year, that translates to 18 days per year. And habitually truant, that's unlawful absences for 20% or more of enrolled school days. Some key considerations to attendance. So we know that it's been difficult for students coming back from virtual learning. It's been a huge adjustment for everyone returning to the school setting from the virtual learning and from the pandemic, with the various impacts of that. We also have increased requirements for quarantines and also increased illnesses. I'm sure you all saw on the news how this winter has been particularly bad for not only COVID-19, but also for RSV and the flu and other viruses. So we know that certainly health factors have made it extremely difficult for students to attend school this year. Also, increased mental health difficulties also following the COVID-19 pandemic, but also mental health concerns that have been that have existed prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Virtual learning certainly made it difficult to adjust, particularly for students that were already struggling before the pandemic. And then we have logistical considerations such as childcare, buses, transportation, things like that. So we say this to acknowledge that it is difficult. We are by no means saying that trying to simplify this and that it's just a matter of showing up. We definitely understand and acknowledge all of the factors that contribute to student absences. And that is the most important starting point for addressing student absences. So when we think about school refusal or school avoidance, we can think about it in a functional based way. So the function of school avoidance or school refusal is often either to gain or avoid something. So the first one obviously is avoidance. So students might want to avoid situations that result in negative thoughts or emotions. So maybe there's something happening in their lives that cause feelings of dread, depression, anxiety, or somatic complaints that are physical in nature, but often reflect a mental health component or a mental health difficulty that's going on with them. So we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but trying to avoid those specific situations and feelings. Also, to escape, this one speaks to more of the situation. Students who are looking to escape something might be aversive or evaluative situations, tests, social situations that might cause them anxiety or lead to feeling uncomfortable or embarrassed, perhaps. So students who have experienced repeated negative experiences in school, they might try to escape school to save face or protect their self-esteem. So this often comes down to a lack of confidence, either in social situations or academically, or sometimes a combination of the two. Some students will also avoid school in order to gain attention, particularly from family members or others in their home environment. And often even if there's limited interactions between the individuals at home, students can still feel some type of comfort with being physically around people in their home or family members. We see this more commonly with younger students. They might be overly dependent on their parents or caregivers and not have the confidence to enter the school building on their own. And then also a big factor or a function of school avoidance might be to gain tangible rewards or things outside of the school. So most commonly watch TV, play video games, be on social media, spend time with friends that are also not attending school or using substances. And often these factors overlap, but it's really important to consider the function of school avoidance because that really informs how we can address it. And then some risk factors for school refusal. So mental health disorders, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Again, the lack of confidence, poor coping skills. School can be a lot for some students. Students can be overwhelmed by the amount of people in a classroom or a school building, the expectations of school. And if students are not able to regulate or cope with things like frustration or feeling overwhelmed, it might be easier for them to avoid that situation completely, resulting in school avoidance. Increased dependency on parents. So really relying on parents to help them through difficult situations and not quite having those skills themselves to independently navigate, or having that comfortability to ask someone at school to help them out with something that's challenging for them or some challenging emotions that they're going through. And also transitions and significant events. These can be as significant as a death in the family. So that can obviously cause some distress and cause students to avoid school, but it can be something like coming back from a weekend can be a very difficult transition for some students. So those are some, and also coming back from breaks is difficult for students, as well as coming back from summer as well. So anytime we see a sort of change in routine, we might be likely to see some more school refusal for our students. So now I'll turn it over to Jacqueline Naves, who is our pupil personnel supervisor, so she can review some of the attendance law.
Thank you. We wanted to make sure everyone is aware of all the lawful absences first, before we talk about anything else. So the first lawful absence, Emily, I don't think I control it, is the law. Let's talk about the law. Who has to go to school? Okay, it's mandatory, compulsory that you have to come to school if you're between the ages of 5 and under 18. They shall attend public school unless the child is otherwise receiving regular instruction from, say, a private school or another that is sanctioned by the school system and the law, or is exempted from law. Now, if your child is being homeschooled, make sure that you've contacted our PGCPS homeschooling office, because they will provide you with information that you have to provide the documentation to us for that exemption for the child not to come to school and be homeschooled. So if your child is 17, they have to stay in school, even if they make 18 during the school year. It's mandatory that they continue school. One of the lawful absences, of course, if you have a death in your family, immediate family, we've expanded this to include extended family or non-relatives. So we're giving up to 4 school days. Sometimes if you're going out of state, out of the country, you might need more. Please consult with the principal before you leave. Also, illness of the student. Of course, if your student is ill, please keep them at home. If the absences reach like 6 days, we ask that you ask for a doctor's note. And as you'll hear later, we have telehealth. So in case you don't have your own doctor, you can consider telehealth. The next one, and this is new, behavior health needs. So if your student has a behavioral health concern, then we ask that you send a note from the licensed mental health practitioner, not your regular pediatrician or your regular doctor. Go to that specialist for mental health. Please send that in with your student if they have continuously absent because of the behavior health needs. Another new lawful absent is a mental health day. Students receive an excused absence for 1 day each semester. So we have 2 semesters, so they'll get 2 for the year. You don't need to send a note from a physician. We ask that the parent or guardian send a note though. So again, this is new, a mental health day. The next is pregnancy and parenting related conditions. So absence around labor and delivery, if the baby has medical appointments, a parenting student is also allowed a minimum of 10 days after the birth of the child, and also legal appointments. And this is new, absence from class due to use of a lactation space. So we will have lactation spaces, so we do in our secondary schools. So if they need to express milk, then they can do so in a private area. And let me mention this, and I think I wanted to put a high point on this. It says parenting students, not just the mother, parenting students. So we have teen fathers or others. So it includes all parenting, pregnancy and parenting. Court summons, so if you have to go to court, that is a lawful absence. Hazardous weather conditions. Now, we usually close PGCPS if we have really bad weather. However, you might have an individual situation where you live is more so hazardous. So that is a lawful absence. Work approved by PGCPS. Your child might be in work study or whatever. If it's approved by us, then it's a lawful absence. Observance of a religious holiday. Also a state emergency. If your child is suspended, then that's a lawful absence. Lack of authorized transportation. If you don't have transportation and you're supposed to have transportation, if it doesn't come, then you will be excused. Also, health exclusion. Many of our students or some of the students have not complied with our immunization policy and they need vaccinations, so they may be excluded. If you are excluded or your child is excluded, that is a lawful absence. Absence due to military families. If you're in the military and your spouse or whoever in your family that lives in your home is the father comes back, the mother comes back from active duty, your child does have the ability to spend some time with them as a lawful absence. So if they're deployed, then they will receive missed homework assigned to them. But military orders may be requested, so have those available for the school, please. Also, any other emergency that the CEO or designee constitutes, it's a sufficient cause for your child to be absent. It might be that they're participating in some civic engagement, and we want you to limit it, please, to 3 days. Also, college visits. They might go on a college tour. We ask that you limit that as well, but those are excused absences. Now, any excused absences, of course, will allow your child to get missed work. The work that they missed, make sure they get it so they could continue to get good grades. Let's talk a little bit about chronic absences. Ms. Pasco did mention it earlier, but chronic absences is missing 10% of the school day for any reason. That includes excused, those lawful absences, and unlawful absences. And that's important because think about it. If your child misses like 2 days a month, then if you add that up, you might not think of it every month, but if you add that up, your child will be chronically absent because that will exceed 10% of the school days. So please keep that in mind. Studies show that 83%, and these are federal numbers, these are national numbers, 83% of students chronically absent in kindergarten, they might not be able to read on level by 3rd grade. Not reading on level of 3rd grade, possibly you might drop out, the child might drop out. High school dropouts are 8 times more likely to be incarcerated than people with high school diplomas. So those are some facts that we don't want to think about, but those are national statistics. Let's talk about lawful absences. These are absences where I named all the lawful absences. Well, anything other than that, then they may be considered a lawful absence. After 10 school days of consecutive unlawful absences, your child might be exited from school. Now, we do all we can to find out what's wrong or what's happened before we withdraw them from school, but I just want you to know that this could possibly happen. So it's important for parents and guardians to let us know. Let us know when your child is going to be absent, especially when it's a lengthy period of time. So this is what can possibly happen with habitual truancy. The parent may be referred to circuit court, and their petition is adult truancy. They may be fined $50 a day or incarcerated up to 3 or 5 days. Now, let me preface all this by saying this isn't something that we want you to happen to you, of course. And it's only when parents are unresponsive to everything we've done. We've tried to get them. We've tried to get the child back in school. We've tried all interventions that we can, and it's nothing's happening. The parent isn't responding. They're not cooperating. That is the only time that this would happen. And if you have not seen this video, we are going to show it to you today because we want to ensure that you know that we all care about your children when they're absent. The CEO, the state's attorney, all of us are in this together because when your child's success, our communities are successful. So please take the time to hear this video. Thank you.
We can't hear it. You may need to stop it and share your sound, please.
I'm State's Attorney Aisha Bray.
Can you hear that now? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience, everyone.
And I'm Dr. Monica Goldson, Chief Executive Officer for Prince George's County Public Schools. We're here together because we're concerned about students in Prince George's County, concerned about the hidden crisis of truancy. 10.1 million students nationwide are chronically absent, 25% more than before the pandemic. Students who are chronically absent can face difficulty learning to read by 3rd grade, problems achieving in middle school, and challenges graduating from high school. In addition, research shows that when a child is not in school, they are more likely to engage in delinquent and criminal activities. And truancy itself is a crime. And we don't want you, our young people, to fall into any of those traps. Our community needs you, and we are here to help make your future bright. If you need help, please reach out to trusted adults at your school. They are here to assist you. And so are we, because we want you to stay in school. It is crucial that you do. Together, we're here to protect you and your future. Burton Stelly.
Thank you so much, Ms. Naves, for that information about the law as it pertains to student attendance and for sharing that video as well. We appreciate that. So next we'll talk about tips, right? Because that's why we're all here. We don't know that information. Now, what do we do with that information? So some tips to increase attendance. So I know I talked about the functions, the 4 different functions of absences and how they can inform strategies. So an example of this might be if the function is to gain access to tangible rewards outside of the school, try as best you can to remove access to those rewards or those tangible items when your student is not in school. So practically, this might look like locking up any type of video game system, or really monitoring the use of social media or their phones. So whatever it is that's driving your particular student to seek access to those things rather than attend school, to address that. Another example might be if you think the function might be to gain attention from family members or to really be around you or someone in your family rather than going to school. An intervention might be to plan something special for after school. So a student is in school all day, maybe they come home and have some special time with their loved one, or on the weekends. And for escape situations, some ways to address this would be to practice coping skills for those situations, talk through those feelings and validate them. You know, I hear that you're really not comfortable in the cafeteria. That must be really hard with all the noise or all the people. Let's talk about things that you can do, and strategies such as deep breathing or talking to an adult, things like that. And allowing students to escape the situation might solve the problem in the short term. So it might obviously make the student feel better, make the child feel more comfortable, but often that causes more problems in the long term. So the longer that you avoid a situation, the more severe your anxiety about that situation is going to get. So it's really important that we address these issues when students are young and give them the coping skills and really the verbal skills that they need to advocate for themselves and to self-regulate when they're feeling anxious or worried or nervous about school or really anything else in their life. And in terms of the feelings of dread or depression or anxiety, those significant big feelings that can cause students to want to avoid school or other situations around the academic environment. Definitely, we want to discuss this with the pediatrician, a mental health provider, and or school counselor at the school level. So really trying to rally all of the resources to try to get ahead of those types of feelings that might be contributing to school refusal. On a more practical level, we have some general preparation tips. So having discussions about returning to school over prolonged school breaks. So while we want our students to enjoy the breaks and really have fun, it's important to, keep talking about, we have a certain amount of days that we get to have fun, and then we are going to go back to school. Like, let's talk about what that might look like and how we might ease into our routine following a break or a weekend. And discussing positive aspects of school frequently. So kind of a dinner time discussion might be, what was the best part of your day at school today? What is one thing fun that you really did? What is one person that you had a positive interaction with at school? What made you feel good today? So having those conversations can ease some feelings of anxiety and dread around school if we're prompting them to think about the positive aspects of school. Also, I wanted to say about general preparation for breaks. Something that might be helpful is if your child has significant difficulty returning to school or starting school at the beginning of the school year, you can definitely start with the drive. If you drive your child to school, or if you walk to school, visiting the parking lot. You can come in and say, this is the building. Remember, we were here last year. We're going to be coming back after break for first grade. Let's talk about how that might go. And how are you feeling right now talking about that? So really focusing on preparation for returning from those long breaks. And that can apply to summer break, winter break, or even long weekends. Also, in terms of preparation, setting a regular bedtime and routine has been shown in the research to have positive impacts on student attendance and also being on time. So having a consistent bedtime, a bedtime routine, and a morning routine as well. So students know exactly what they're going to expect going to bed and waking up in the morning. Also, any kind of preparation that you can do the night before in terms of laying out clothes, packing backpacks, things like that and developing backup plans for getting to school if something else comes up. Having a family member that you can call, or a couple of family members or neighbors or another parent who you might work with if you're having some challenges getting your child to school. Another strategy is to track attendance. So we know we have School Max. You're able to see your students' attendance tracked in School Max. Something helpful, particularly for students that are a little bit older, maybe a later elementary, middle, or high school, might be to look at, look, you missed 2 days, or you went to school, because we want to word it positively. You went to school 3 days last week. What can we do to increase that? Do you think that it would be possible to expect that you go to school 4 days that week? So really meeting your child or your student where they are, because we don't want to go from having a student be absent 5 days a month to expecting them to have no absences. That might not be a realistic expectation. That's obviously what we would like, but we really have to work with our children and meet them where they are and celebrate those improvements and successes, no matter how small they might seem. And also celebrating successes might look like acknowledging effort. So maybe they made an effort and they weren't what we might think of was successful. But you can still say, you know, we went to the parking lot today. That was great. Let's talk about what we can do tomorrow to improve upon that. Maybe we can go in the doorway. So being very gradual and intentional about it, and acknowledging the effort and the actual achievement of those goals. And also, so a script that I have here might be, I noticed it was really hard for you to get to school today. It was really hard for you to just get dressed and put on your shoes, but I really admired that you still went even though it was hard. And what was the best part of your day today? Might be something that might be powerful for a student to hear. So now that we've talked about some strategies, and obviously there is some overlap with mental health that I kind of alluded to, but to talk about that more in depth, we have our wonderful Liz Briganti, who supports our Youth Care First program through Shepherd Pratt. And she's going to talk a little bit more about the mental health difficulties and strategies for that in order to increase attendance.
Yes, hello, thank you. I'd like to start with what the research is showing. And like it states here, 1 in 5 school-age youth in the United States are experiencing mental health issues that are interfering with their learning. Suicide has now become the second leading cause of death for young people ages 10 to 24. More than half of our young people have mental health needs that either go untreated or undertreated. When they're not adequately addressed, we see mental illness being linked to reduced academic achievements, increased suspension, and as we're talking about, chronic school absenteeism, and which could cause credit deficiency. Well, some of the stuff that we're seeing that is supporting is early interventions using evidence-based counseling that increases the students' emotional and mental wellness and improves their social, behavioral, and academic functioning. Schools are an important partnership in promoting mental health. Families are more likely to utilize mental and physical health if the services are located at the school. And Prince George's County is one of those school districts that's actually done a wonderful job in implementing this into many of their schools in the community. What the parents need to know: mental health needs not addressed are going to play a large role on attendance. That includes anxiety, depression, and some of the diagnoses that may not even be recognized. Some of the causes are becoming overwhelmed, struggles to getting to school, struggles to staying in school, struggles to engaging in school, and then the lack of peer and socialization with not being in the schools. Some of the warning signs that we're seeing are concerns about what to expect at school. So these are some of the things that the students are feeling and seeing, and that we're seeing as a trend. Concerns about being away from the parent, difficulties in doing the school work, there's no friends or socializing. We talk about bullying, complaining that they feel ill or becoming sick. There's a lot of crying or sadness, becoming angry or easily frustrated, refusing to go to school, not getting on the bus, not wanting to walk into the building. And I want to touch real quickly back on the illness and becoming sick, because some of this is what we would call somatic, which could be that they're internalizing the anxiety, the depression, and these different feelings. And so their body starts to react and they start to have these physical ailments that come up when they're feeling these warning signs. So these are some of the things that we're seeing across with the children. So I come and ask, what can a parent do? And so there's a few things that we can do to support the children. And so I've just put a couple of bullet points here. And some of this, like Emily has stated, we've talked about a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit more in depth, is first and foremost, we definitely would recommend to make an appointment with the physician to rule out any medical issues. So when you're hearing that your child's feeling sick, they're not feeling well, we definitely would like to have a physical done, make sure that that's being taken care of first, that there's a medical clearance before we go to the next steps. We would recommend talking to a mental health professional or physician about the concerns and then work to develop a plan. And as I stated, many of the schools in Prince George's County have already began the school-based mental health program. I wanted to also state that nationally, out of all of the children that are in mental health support, 70% are school-based. So that lets you know what an intricacy it has to do, integral part, the schools with the mental health component. Talk to your child about the reasons they don't want to go to school. Find ways to validate, find solutions. So maybe figuring out a way, okay, so what's going on? Is it that they need some support? Is it a particular course? Is it a particular class that makes them scared? How do we get the school involved so that you can also work with them? We also insist that you send the child to school, even for a limited time. So even if you start with what I would call a little bit of exposure. Emily talked about getting ready and driving to the school. I think that's a wonderful idea. Maybe the next step is going into the building, spending maybe a class or two. And as little by little, kind of getting them back into the rhythm of coming back into the school. And most importantly to me is to discuss the avoidance and the challenges with the school staff and ask for support and assistance. So if you have a child that's having such a distressing time with getting to school, and it's not just, like we talked about all the lawful and unlawful ways of attendance, I feel that it's really important to have that collaboration and communication with the school, letting the administration know, letting the attendants know what's going on and how you guys are working together to try to come up with a plan to help the child come back into the school if there's a mental health concern. That's it.
And thank you so much, Liz. That's a great segue to our slide regarding the mental health professionals that are available in PGCPS. We do have professional school counselors at each school, depending on the size of the school. There may be more than one, particularly in middle and high schools. And you can access information on who those people are and their email address on your school's website. We also have school psychologists at our schools. They often have more than one building, but they are certainly a resource that can be available to you for support with your student. Mental health clinicians, we also have these licensed social workers or licensed therapists in some of our buildings. I think all of the high schools and all middle schools do have mental health clinicians, and we're working to have all elementary schools with mental health clinicians starting next year. So that's been very exciting for us to have that additional added resource. And also pupil personnel workers in our schools to monitor the student attendance and provide some of those supports that Ms. Naves stated. And then the school nurse, a lot of the times medical and mental health things overlap. So the school nurse is also an excellent point of contact for getting assistance with increasing student attendance, but more importantly, addressing the why as to what's causing that school avoidance or school refusal. So those are just some of the key players, but certainly teachers are absolutely critical in supporting student attendance as well, and can often be kind of the first point of contact, but making sure that you also touch base with these other mental health professionals and that you know that they are a resource available to you as well. We also have new this year a mental health email address. So if you are having difficulty with accessing resources either at your student school or in the community, you can send us an email at mentalhealth@pgcps.org, and we will touch base with you regarding your concern in order to assist you to access those resources. And as I think Ms. Naves alluded to, we do have a new collaboration with Hazel Hart, which allows us to provide medical, or to facilitate, I should say, medical care and teletherapy, both at home and sometimes in schools as well. So, and I'll link a sign up to this, but this allows students to access medical care virtually. So if you're having difficulty getting an appointment with your child's physician, or for whatever reason you're just having trouble getting an appointment, you can contact your school counselor or school nurse for the medical piece to access medical care and make an appointment virtually, and they can facilitate some further care, whether that's writing a prescription, having that filled, or having a note so that that absence turns into an excused absence. It's definitely a great resource that we're very excited to be rolling out this year. And related to that, that is also has a telehealth piece as well. So your child can visit with a therapist via teletherapy to help them cope with whatever they're feeling, and where appropriate, bridge the gap until some local and or in-person services become available to them. So we do have that available in many of our schools, but we also have that as an option for you to access at home. And the telehealth and the medical services are available 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So if your student has a late school, it may be possible that they can get an appointment either for the medical or the teletherapy before they even go to school. So that might be a good option for you if your student's having difficulty with going to school, to have them prepare for that in the morning. But obviously that's on a case-by-case basis, depending on the availability of appointments. They also have multilingual doctors and therapists, so many different languages that they can provide services to. There is no cost to families, so everything has been made free to PGCPS. If you have insurance, they can bill your insurance, but it is not a requirement. And I'll be sure to link that sign up if you haven't done that already. But you can also contact your school counselor or your school nurse for more information about Hazel Health. And then I also wanted to just share a list of resources. So if you scan that QR code, it will take you to a sheet of resources, but I will also link it in the chat if you don't have a phone or a device to scan that QR code. But it's many of what we've already discussed. So we also have a panel discussion with some questions, and we certainly invite you to ask any additional questions that you have, and we will do our best to answer those for you. But our panelists have already been introduced, but again, this is everyone we have participating: Dr. Faison, Ms. Naves, Ms. Strayhorn, and Ms. Briganti Vidal. So thank you all so much for participating and for all the information that you've already given. And we will go to some questions now. So the first question we have are, what are some of the things that PGCPS schools are doing to address attendance concerns that we discussed? Ms. Naves, I see you're talking, but you're on mute. I'm sorry.
Okay, I can answer that. First of all, we try to communicate with you, whether or not about your child's attendance, whether or not we're calling you, the school staff's calling you, or you receive an email or a letter, some type of communication, so you know. Also, we provide through SchoolMax and the family portal, we ask that you go on the family portal to see what your child's attendance is like, to make sure it's correct and to make sure you're informed about your child's attendance. Also, we may have robocalls, so you might get a call to your home that your child has been absent from school. Also, parent conferences are really important, so I encourage you, if you are having problems with your child in attendance, then talk to the teachers, especially if it's one or two teachers that your child isn't going to the class. Please make sure you take advantage of conferencing with them. We also have team meetings, and you are part of the team, parents and guardians. We have our school, intervention team, as well as our school support teams, but you are a partner in this with to encourage your children to come to school. Also, we might have your child enter into an attendance contract. Someone might knock on your door. If we can't get you, we're going to come try to find you so we can talk to you. So my staff, people, personnel workers, as well as other staff might come to visit your home. And we are there to help and to inquire to see how we can help best serve you and your family. Also, there's an interagency council that we might refer you to and your family to, because it's part of the community, part of the school system, and they have valuable information that maybe they could help provide some strategies to use to help your student come to school. We have a truancy reduction court, and this is for usually ages 12 and a half to maybe 17. And this is a program. It says court, but it's not court. It's through the court system, but it's actually a program that provides tutoring, resources. They even have a graduation when your child is successful after that program. Also, you might, if you're one of the targeted schools, you might get text messages through All Here. Text messages telling you that your child hasn't been in school, as well as giving you information and tips about attendance and other things. Many of our parents, it's a 24/7 situation where they text us back. You get a text and then you text back, and the school is notified and able to provide whatever you need, whatever you're asking. So that's a good service that Prince George's County Public School provides. Also, other external partners we use. So you might be contacted by one of our partners that is trying to get your child services or recommending services for you and your students. And also, Ms. Pasco is giving you the list of community resources that you can access at any time. But we are here to serve. And so there are many things that are going on in the school system to encourage attendance, incentives and different incentive programs in the school. So that is what Prince George's County Public Schools is doing to encourage attendance.
Dr. Faison, I see you jump right in.
So I wanted to ask the questions that have come up in the Q&A so that if we run out of time with our panelists, then our parents have some of the answers that they've asked questions to. So earlier, Ms. Naves referenced in our administrative procedure about 6 days needing a doctor's note if a student is out. So the first question is in regards to that. And if you are referring to 6 consecutive days absent.
Right.
And the second question to that is also, if a doctor's note has been provided, will that absence be excused and removed from the system, or will it still be listed as a no-show?
It will be a lawful absence. So if your child has been absent because they're ill and you send in a doctor's note, a physician's note, then it will be changed to lawful. So it does stay on their record, but it's a lawful absence.
Third question is, are there any recommendations for a small child that wants to stay home when a close friend is often absent? The parent has asked the student to make new friends, but that hasn't happened yet.
I can go ahead and take that one. So what I'm hearing is that you have a small child that is still building their social capacity, and for whatever reason, this particular friend is so close to them. And I would encourage the parent to possibly maybe do some rewards and maybe do some, that would be, it fits into the question of how we increase motivation to our students. And that is, I think that maybe having some rewards. So if they go to school, will they get a reward for going to school and making it to the classroom without the friend being there? With regards to making the friends, I would highly recommend maybe possibly not so much make a friend, but maybe the parent could have that conversation of saying hello, or just something small to begin that engagement with another student. And that would be the slow way to take care of it. And it sounds like there's already a great communication because the child is able to tell the parent, hey, mom or dad, I don't want to go to school. I'm scared. I don't want to be alone without my friend. So I think that continuing that communication is extremely key to building this, and hopefully you'll get your little ones to start wanting to go back to school.
I completely agree. Just to kind of piggyback on that, it sounds like your child is very, self-aware, that they know that this is a person that they enjoy being around, and they want to be around this person all the time. And if they're not going to school, the child doesn't want to go to school. So I think some conversations about, what is it that you like about this student? What are some things that make him or her a good friend? And are there any other students that you think might be similar, or you might be able to engage with in a similar way, or have fun with in a similar way? So having those conversations while using the language that your child is using, I think might help as well. That's a great question. Thank you.
One more. A parent says, my child is a third year ninth grader because of attendance, and they are requesting support, and they're currently awaiting that support. So the student is now enrolled in the virtual program, which has been a struggle for the student. So what type of resources can be provided to this student who is enrolled in a virtual program? So she learns better in person, but the school, she learns better in person, but needs support for the virtual option. May need also an IEP evaluation per the parent because of the lack of instruction. But overall, the student is needing support, and what recommendations would you provide?
I would recommend talking to the school counselor, and let them know that your child is not performing as well as you thought they could in the virtual atmosphere. I don't know if you've considered the non-traditional programs that we offer. Maybe that might be a consideration that the child can apply. You can apply for the non-traditional program, which is an in-person program with supports.
One last question. Can you address a fourth grader not wanting to go to school due to anxiety? And she often visits the nurse. Well, the student wants to visit the nurse, and for whatever reason had not been able to do so. But the student really has a struggle wanting to go to school because of anxiety. What would you recommend?
And I think I can speak to maybe the reluctance to send the student to the nurse, because as I referred to earlier, the more that you avoid a situation, the higher that's going to make the anxiety. So avoiding the classroom or the cafeteria or what have you by going to the nurse makes the child feel better in the moment, but ultimately makes the problem worse in the long run. So that's often why we want to avoid removing students from the situation. But we can talk about what supports can be put in place in the classroom or in the school environment. Many classrooms, many schools have what's referred to as a calm down corner, or teachers are implementing certain spaces in their classroom where students can go if they just need a break. So having a conversation with your child's teacher about what kind of strategies and supports can be in place that keep the student in the classroom, but support their mental health in working through that anxiety and giving them the time and the space to kind of work through it and continuously build those self-regulation and self-awareness strategies. So I would definitely recommend speaking to the teacher and possibly administration, and maybe requesting a student intervention team meeting in order to have the team at the school level talk about what supports they can provide and address your concerns directly. And I know that's a really tough balance, because we just want our kids to feel good. So I hear you, and it's very hard, but I hope that this helps a little bit. Okay, we do have a couple other questions. So I know we talked a little bit about the virtual option. I'm just want if there are any parents or guardians here that are wondering about any other alternative options to full-time in-person learning within PGCPS and how those might be considered. Ms. Strayhorn wants to respond to that one.
The alternative to students attending full-time in Prince George's County Public Schools would be homeschooling. Homeschooling is not supported by Prince George's County Public Schools, meaning that we don't provide the instructional materials for the student. As a parent, you're actually withdrawing your student from the school, but you are providing a notification to the homeschooling office that your intention is to homeschool your child. You, as the homeschooling parent, get to select what curriculum you utilize for your child. You select what hours you're going to be teaching your child, and twice a year, you have a review with the homeschooling office where you show your child is receiving regular, thorough instruction in the courses required by the state of Maryland. So Maryland requires all homeschooling families to teach English, math, social studies, science, art, health, physical education, and music. So when students are not enrolled in the public school and parents have chosen homeschooling as the option for their child, the parent is actually providing all of the resources for the child, but still complying with the state regulation to have the 2 reviews each year.
Thank you so much for that information. And similarly, if I suspect that my child is experiencing a physical or emotional ailment, who might I contact at the school to receive that support or guidance about how to address the physical or emotional ailment?
To piggyback on what Ms. Strayhorn indicated about homeschooling, Prince George's County Public Schools really desires the opportunity to educate all of our students who are enrolled. We know that parents, for some reason or another, plethora, variety of reasons, may opt to withdraw a child from our public school system, but it is truly our desire to have the opportunity to educate all of our students. And if there is an issue where a parent feels a student's need cannot be met in the public school system, we would love for you to have a conversation with the school administrator, with your school counselor, even request a student intervention team meeting. That is the team that we refer our students to when a child may have a medical difficulty, a behavioral difficulty, attendance difficulty, and that team comes together to hear the concern of the parent on behalf of the student and creates a plan, a pathway of support. How can we support the student remaining in our school system and being successful? And so I would recommend having that conversation if the student has physical, mental, emotional, medical ailment or illness, a condition that may impact their ability to attend school regularly. Have that conversation with your school counselor and talk about what are the ways that a student may be able to be supported academically, continuing their learning and receiving their education in PGCPS to have that information provided.
Thank you. And kind of to piggyback off of that, I guess the next question might be, what are some ways, or how would parents or families go about seeking support in the community or outside of the school system in terms of mental health support or counseling? Like where would we recommend that they start?
I would recommend that you would begin with the youth hubs that are around the county. In addition, the health department would be another good place to go to that would be able to help you. Then, of course, we would say to your physician would be another person that you could we would recommend to go back to also if needed. And of course, the resources that we've spoken about here at the school, using the new, also the new email, the mental health at pgcps.org could also be a good resource to get you started with some of the different resources that we have. So those would probably be the ones that we would recommend to start with.
Thank you. And if school avoidance might not be, manifesting a mental health disorder, if it's more of a concern that comes down to motivation, the child or student just can't get the drive or the motivation, can't motivate themselves to get ready for school, to physically go to school and to stay in school or stay in class. What recommendations might we have around motivation for attending school and staying in school throughout the day?
So I would suggest, again, to me, it would begin with the conversation with the student directly to figure out what is lacking, what is the official reason behind the situation as to why they don't want to come to school. Like I stated before, I feel that a lot of times with our young children, our adolescents, having some rewards could be beneficial, having some positive reinforcement. If you get to school, if you do these many classes, there could be some activities or some rewards that they're able to do that they may not normally be able to get access to. But I would also highly recommend, after having that conversation, is getting some advice from a mental health professional or physician to make sure that, again, there isn't a mental health like depression or anxiety falling behind it, that some of these things are just, there's additional support that's needed. So therapy, psychiatry, and there could be some other resources that are put together that are out there in the community that could start to help the child to get more motivated to come to school.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I just to add to that, I think sometimes students feel a little bit detached from school. So having them take part in maybe an extracurricular activity or a club at school, something that's not so academically based, might be a good starting point to increase that motivation. In addition to having conversations about, what are we trying to get out of school here? What might you want to do with your life after school? And how does academics and going to school tie to that? Because sometimes for students, I think it just seems like an everyday decision, and their brains need some help with tying that to what they ultimately want and their goals. So having those conversations, I think that can be powerful as well. But I love what you said, Liz, about maybe the younger students might need it to be more tangible and more immediate to see that.
Well, and I agree with you with the older children. I like, what you said, the sports and activities make you more connected to the school. Therefore, a lot of times with those comes some of the rules of certain GPA and you start to see a consistency of them coming in. I also think a lot of times I've seen there's always a class that they do like. There's at least one or two that they're like, I really like that professor. I really like that teacher. And that would be also a trusted adult that maybe the parents could start talking to bring them in to maybe support and bring that motivation to the child.
Also excellent points. Thank you so much. And kind of more of a logistical question. I know a little bit ago we talked about lack of authorized transportation as a excused absence. So what exactly might that look like in terms of actual day-to-day life?
Sure. A lot of times we have students that have a special circumstance whereby a bus maybe didn't show up. So they are authorized to have that transportation. However, the transportation didn't arrive for the student. And so in those cases, that would be an example of lack of authorized transportation, and it would be excused. Sometimes we are, and that does happen right now with the bus driver shortage, the delays in busing. Sometimes you will notice that there's a delay in your transportation. And so those absences because of or delays because of the authorized transportation, they are permitted the transportation, but the transportation for whatever reason did not arrive. That is a lack of authorized transportation. Keep in mind, if your student is in a school where the parent must provide the transportation, that's not the same as lack of authorized transportation. Lack of authorized transportation is only for when the student is routed a bus, but the bus, for whatever reason, does not come, causing the student to be absent for that day.
Thank you for those distinctions. I think that helps clear it up for everybody. Appreciate that. Another question that related to kind of logistics might be, if my child is attending school but not attending class, what might that look like? Like, how is that measured and documented and addressed? Sorry, I know that was 3 things in one, but I know Ms. Naves can handle it.
Right. Your child is not attending. Well, you send them to school. They get out the school bus. They get out of the car. They come in school, but they're not going to class. So the question is, how would you measure it? First of all, we need to find out why they're not going to class. So just unpeeling back those layers. If you find that's the case, then I would recommend again that you talk to your school counselor, the teacher, the administrator, to provide some answers. And with your child, especially, it sounds like this is an older child that will have this situation. Let's talk about what does that mean in terms of attendance. So if we're talking about elementary, then elementary schools are taking attendance in the morning. Okay, so those children are probably going to school. Let's go to secondary school. Now, secondary school, there's period attendance. So each teacher takes attendance. So, for example, if there are 4 classes of the day, a 4-period day, and your child doesn't go to class, skips class 3 of those periods, what does that mean? Okay, so if they attend 2 out of 4, they're considered present. If that by the 3rd period, they go to that class, then that's over 50% that they missed. So there'll be a half day. They'll be present for a half day. So they have to attend at least 10% of the school day to even have any type of partial type of attendance. So you either have a full day or a half day attendance. So if you attend 2 out of the 4, full day. Anything less than that is a partial day or half day attendance. Anything less than 10%, you're absent for the entire day.
Thank you very much. And I guess the final question that I have on my list that I think we've touched on a lot today, but I think always could use some repeating, are how can I access mental health for my child in school?
We're coming full circle. So we've talked about our school counselors that are employed in our schools, as well as our school psychologists. We also have mental health clinicians. So if you're not sure whether you're at a school that has a mental health clinician, you can have that conversation with the school counselor to request counseling services. The counselor may determine that the needs of the student should be referred to a clinician if there is one in the building. Additionally, telehealth and Hazel has been referenced as well. It is in our secondary schools during the day, where your student will be able to have an appointment to meet with someone virtually and have a private counseling session right at school with someone virtually. You may also have access to that elementary through high school in the evening after school if you want your child to receive a private counseling session in the privacy of your home. Additionally, if you're not sure what counseling services are available in the building, you don't have a relationship with your school counselor, which I would encourage, you may send an email to mentalhealth@pgcps.org. I think the overarching theme of tonight, when we talk about attendance and how critical and important it is to a child's mental health, and yet the mental health may impact attendance, is that there's always a line of communication. So if your student isn't feeling well, you are communicating to the school, you're sending a note to the teachers that your child has been assigned to let them know that your child isn't feeling well. What was also referenced earlier is the mental health day. If you determine your child needs a mental health day, or your child just says, listen, I need to tap out for a day, the mental health day can be utilized, but you must communicate to the school and to the teachers via email. My child is taking a mental health day and it will be excused. What is so critical about that communication, it makes a difference between what a child is able to make up and get the grade for the work that they miss and what they are not. And Ms. Naves referenced this earlier. When a child is unlawfully absent, or let's say the child may be actually lawfully absent, but because there was no communication from the home to the school has no idea why the child wasn't present. And so with just that remaining that line of open communication from home to school, letting them know it's a mental health day, or my child is ill, or it falls into one of those 14 or 15 categories of a lawful absence, your child can continue to be academically successful and earn, make up the work that they miss and earn a grade. For those unlawfully absences for which we have no communication and no idea why a child is absent, a child will earn a 0 for the work that they miss. This kind of grading puts children at danger for failure. And after a few absences and a few zeros, students may lose motivation and interest in trying to make up the time that they have missed. So I encourage you above everything to keep the line of communication open, access the mental health resources that were provided today, avail yourself to our attendance procedure, AP 5113, and learn what the lawful reasons are, and begin to open that line of communication to the school every single time there is a need for the student to be absent. Additionally, home and hospital teaching was referenced, homeschooling was referenced. There are so many resources in Prince George's County Public Schools to ensure our children are successful. And so I've answered that question.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of that information. And thank you all for hanging with us. I know it's late. I know it's a school night, so we really appreciate you being here for this conversation. I did link Hazel Health, the landing page for PGCPS, in the chat, in addition to the mentalhealth@pgcps.org email address. And if you would be so kind as to tell us what you thought of tonight, if you found it helpful, any suggestions for future Wellness Wednesday topics. They are in English and Spanish surveys, and English and French, an English and French version as well in the chat. I also saw a question that asked, is there a copy of the slides or is this meeting of this meeting? And the answer is yes. This is being recorded and it will be uploaded to the PGCPS YouTube page. So you will be able to reference that later on. It's usually up in, I think, a day or two after the event. So you will definitely be able to access that. And please share it. If you know someone who is struggling with having their child come to school, or school refusal, or mental health difficulties, please feel free to share this, any information that you gained, or any tips, or the link to the webinar itself. We really appreciate you attending, and we hope that you gain something from this. And again, please access those resources if you need some further assistance. And I also saw a request to display the QR code, so I will put that up as well, as you all are kind of signing out in case you need that. There we go. Okay. And there's that. That's the QR code to the resource page that we have created for resources specific to student attendance and mental health resources that we have available both in our schools and in the community. So thank you all so much again. We really appreciate you and hope you have a great rest of your week and rest of your evening. Thank you.